Andrew listened without interrupting. The morning light made thin gold lines across the table, catching in the honey-colored wood and the soft steam rising from the teacups. Gabrielle's voice was small, but each word held something sharp, something that came from a place too deep for a child to understand, yet too present to ignore. Martha. The name sat in the air like a shadow. Andrew leaned back slowly in his chair, and the wood creaked under him. His jaw worked once, tightening. Not with anger at Gabrielle, but at the shape of the world that had led to this moment. He let out a slow breath that sounded like a man deciding what parts of himself he was willing to bring into the day. "I see," he murmured. He didn't push her further. Not yet. Gabrielle stared down at her hands again. They were clean now, washed, dried, lightly scented with the soap from the guest bathroom, but they still trembled. A kind of trembling that didn't come from hunger anymore. But something else. Something like the fear that someone might take this away. Andrew stood up from the table, pushing his chair back with care so it didn't scrape the floor. He walked to the sink and let the tap run for a moment before turning it off again. He wasn't thirsty. He wasn't even thinking about the water. He was thinking about papers. About courts. About guardianship. Responsibility. About what it meant to make a promise out loud. He turned back to her. "Gabrielle," he said in a tone that was steady, but heavy with meaning. She looked up, her small shoulders tight. "You're not going back to that cabin. You hear me?" Her lips parted, just a little. Shock flickered through her eyes like a bird that wasn't sure it was allowed to land anywhere. "You're staying here," he continued. "At least for now. And longer, if that's what needs to happen." The words sank, deep and slow, into her. Not immediately understood. But felt. Like warmth spreading through cold fingers. "But," she whispered, because there had always been a but, always something that took good things away before she could touch them for real. "What if someone says I should go? Someone important?" Andrew knelt in front of her, not rushing, not dramatic, just lowering himself so they met eye to eye. His face, up close, showed things she hadn't noticed the day before. Tiredness. Yes. But also a kind of strength she didn't know how to name. Something like certainty. Something like a wall she could lean on. "Gabrielle," he said, "you were left. Not given. Not placed with care. Left. That matters. And it means something legally, and more importantly, morally." She didn't understand the legal part. She barely understood the moral part. But she understood the difference between someone who leaves and someone who stays. "And I'm not letting you go hungry or scared again," Andrew added, voice low but sure. "Not while I have breath in my body." Something in her tightened and then loosened, all at once. A sound escaped her. Not crying, not a sob. Just a small, broken release of air. The sound of something inside her shifting after holding too much weight for too long. Andrew didn't pull her into an embrace. He didn't touch her at all. He just stayed where he was, close enough for her to reach, if she wanted. And slowly, slowly, she did. Tiny fingers. Light as the first drop of rain. They touched the sleeve of his shirt. Not gripping, just touching. As if asking whether the fabric would disappear if she reached too hard. He didn't move. Gabrielle leaned forward, just enough for her forehead to rest against his shoulder. Andrew closed his eyes. He didn't speak. He didn't promise anything new. The promise had already been made. He simply let the moment be what it was. A beginning. Later that morning, after dishes were washed and the dining room filled with the quiet ticking of a clock perched on a shelf, Andrew led Gabrielle into the living room. The curtains were open, letting in clear morning light that painted clean edges on every surface. A thick carpet covered most of the floor, a soft cream color that looked like clouds pressed into fabric. Gabrielle hesitated before stepping on it, worried she'd leave marks. Andrew noticed. "It's just a rug," he said gently. "It's meant to be walked on." She placed one bare foot onto it, and the softness met her skin like something unreal. She curled her toes and felt a small warmth bloom in her chest. A memory tried to surface, something like laughter in her mother's kitchen when she was very young, but the edges of it were blurred, like a photograph left too long in sunlight. Andrew motioned toward the couch. There was a folder there. Closed. Thick. He sat down beside it, hands resting loosely on his knees. Gabrielle, he said softly, we have some choices to make. And I'll make sure you never have to make them alone. But I need to know a few more things to do this right. She sat across from him, legs dangling from the couch, feet swinging in small slow arcs above the floor. Do you remember anyone else? Any family? Anyone who could have taken care of you? Gabrielle shook her head. No. Just Martha. After Mom, after her voice caught on something sharp inside her. After she was gone, it was just Martha. Andrew nodded slowly. All right, he said. Then I'll speak with some people today. And we'll figure out what steps to take next. She didn't know what that meant. But the tone, steady, grounded, made her believe it was okay not to know. Andrew reached for the folder and opened it. Inside were photographs. Gabrielle froze. Not because she recognized the pictures, but because they were of Andrew. Captured moments of him with other people. Smiling at dinners. Standing behind desks. Wearing suits in important-looking rooms. Shaking hands. Holding files. Talking into microphones. A life full of things she didn't understand. She looked at him, eyes wide. You're important, she whispered. Andrew blinked, caught off guard. I'm something like a lawyer, he said with a faint exhale that wasn't quite a laugh. But that's not important right now. What matters is that I have the means to help you. The means. A house like this. Food like that. Clothes that smelled of clean things, not rain-rotted wood. Gabrielle looked around again as if seeing everything new. And something dawned on her, slow and frightening. Things this good tended not to last. Her heartbeat sped, faster and faster, small chest tightening. Andrew saw it. He stood, carefully, not sudden, and stepped into the kitchen. She heard drawers. Cabinets. Running water. Then returning footsteps. He placed a small ceramic mug in front of her. Warm. Steaming. The scent of cocoa and milk rising like a comforting blanket. Drink, he said softly. Gabrielle wrapped her hands around the mug. The heat soaked into her skin, calming her in slow waves. Nothing here is going to disappear, Andrew said. Not while you're here. Not while I'm here. She stared into the cocoa, watching faint swirls move on the surface. She didn't know how to trust words like that yet. But she wanted to try. Wanted it so badly her chest hurt. She drank slowly, small sips that felt like they settled her heartbeat one drop at a time. The mug was warm against her palms, grounding her, reminding her she existed somewhere safe. Andrew watched quietly, not staring, not examining, just present. When she finished, he took the mug gently from her hands, set it on a coaster, and stood. Come, he said. There's something I want to show you. She followed him down a short hallway that led toward the back of the house. The wide windows let the morning spill in, pouring light across the floorboards. Outside, the yard stretched green and soft under the sky, with flower beds traced like careful brushstrokes around the edges and the tall trees sighing in the wind. But Gabrielle wasn't looking outside. She was looking at the door Andrew approached, the last one on the left. He paused with his hand on the handle. His voice changed, not cold, not guarded, but quieter. A tone someone used for something that used to hurt, and still did sometimes. This was my daughter's room. Gabrielle stopped breathing. Andrew opened the door. The room was not dusty. Not untouched. Not abandoned. But held, kept, with quiet reverence. The sunlight fell in soft squares across pale yellow walls and a white iron bed with a quilt folded perfectly at the foot. A bookcase stood in the corner with picture books arranged neatly. A single stuffed rabbit sat against the pillows, its fur worn from use and love, one eye a little scratched, but still soft-looking. A small dresser, a lamp shaped like a star, curtains with tiny flowers. It was not a shrine. It was a memory that had been dusted gently every week. Gabrielle looked at Andrew. He didn't cry. But there was grief in his eyes the way there is snow in the air before it falls. She was 6, he said simply. Gabrielle didn't ask what happened. The room already carried the answer in its stillness. The way the books hadn't been moved. The way the bed looked like a child had climbed out one morning and never climbed back in. But Andrew didn't turn away from the room. He faced it. He stepped into it. And he motioned for Gabrielle to come too. She did. Her bare feet sank into the soft rug on the floor. The stuffed rabbit watched her with a kind of quiet welcome as she stopped at the foot of the bed. Andrew rested his hand on the bedpost. Her name was Emily, he said. She was gentle. And stubborn. And she laughed with her whole body. The house was loud when she was here. Gabrielle looked around again, and now she could almost hear the echo of that laughter, light and wild, bouncing off the walls. I don't keep this room because I want to pretend nothing changed, he continued, eyes fixed on the quilt. I keep it because something precious lived here. And I won't forget her. Gabrielle swallowed. She understood that. Her mother had not left anything behind. No room. No clothes. No photographs. The sickness had been slow and long and took everything before it took her. She had tried to hold on to her mother in memory alone, but memory was slippery. It blurred. Faded. Hurt to look at. Andrew's keeping of this room felt like holding, not clinging. A difference she didn't have words for yet. He turned to her. I'm telling you this because I want you to know something very clearly, he said, voice steady. You are not replacing her. You are not filling a space that belonged to someone else. You are here because you need a place to be safe. And I am someone who can offer that. She nodded. Slowly. Deeply. He continued. And I want you to feel like you can breathe here. Like you are allowed to exist here. Something loosened in her chest, a knot that had been tied so tightly for so long that she hadn't realized it was possible to untie it. Andrew exhaled and stepped out of the room. Gabriel followed him, and when he closed the door, he did so gently, as though closing a book at the end of a chapter, not locking anything away. The day stretched quiet and warm, like the house was teaching Gabriel how to rest. They sat on the porch in the late morning, Andrew with a mug of coffee, Gabriel with a small bowl of sliced apples. The trees whispered overhead, leaves flickering with sunlight. Birds called. A dog barked in the distance. Somewhere, a car door thumped shut. The world was ordinary here. Peaceful in a way she had forgotten life could be. At one point, she leaned her head against the porch railing and closed her eyes. Just for a second. She didn't sleep, but something close to sleep skimmed the surface of her mind. It felt safe to do so. And that alone nearly made her cry again. Around noon, Andrew made a phone call. He didn't hide it. Didn't leave the room. Didn't step outside. He sat at the kitchen table, the sunlight hitting the dark grain of the wood, and dialed a number from memory. Laura, he said when the line picked up. Yes. I need your help. Right away. Gabrielle watched from the doorway, but Andrew didn't look rushed or nervous. His voice was calm. Firm. Yes. Her name is Gabrielle, he continued. She was abandoned yesterday. Out near the old Holt cabin. No injuries from what I can tell. Malnourished. Exhausted. But she's stable. Safe. I've already given her food, a bath, a place to sleep. He paused. No, I'm not taking her to a shelter, he said simply. Gabrielle's heart jolted hard. Shelter. The word struck like a stone. Cold floors. Strange beds. Lights that didn't turn off. People who came and went and didn't look at you long enough to care. Shelters were where children without worth went. Her breathing quickened. But then. No, Andrew repeated. Calm. Clear. Unyielding. She stays here. I'll start the process. There was silence on the line. Then Andrew nodded once to something Laura must have said. Yes, he said. I understand the legal steps. I'll come in this afternoon. Thank you. He hung up the phone and looked at Gabrielle. She stood frozen in the doorway, hands tight against her sides. Andrew stepped toward her. You're not going anywhere, he said. I told you. You stay here. Gabrielle's knees gave out, not collapsing, just bending. She caught herself on the doorframe. She didn't cry. But her whole body shook with something too big for tears. Andrew crouched down at slow, patient, just like he had on that dirt road. You don't have to believe me yet, he said. You just have to stay. I'll do the rest. Gabrielle nodded, small, trembling. And something inside her, the part that had been braced for running, for hiding, for surviving, relaxed by one fragile degree. The afternoon passed quietly. Andrew worked in his study downstairs, typing, reading, speaking on the phone in a tone that sounded like a man shaping outcomes rather than reacting to them. Gabrielle wandered the house slowly. Not exploring, just existing. She traced the shelves in the living room with her eyes, rows of thick books with titles she didn't recognize. A few framed photos of Andrew younger, smiling, standing with colleagues at what looked like a government building. A small photo of Andrew and a little girl, Emily, on a pier at sunset. Both laughing. Wind tugging their hair. She didn't touch anything. But she memorized the images. She sat in the soft chair by the window and watched the wind ripple the grass. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt gentle. Safe. After a while, she fell asleep in the chair. Her head leaned against the cushion, her knees curled to her chest, one hand clutching the edge of the blanket Andrew must have placed there sometime earlier, folded neatly. Waiting. She didn't dream this time. Andrew found her like that, curled and breathing softly. He didn't wake her. He simply stood there for a while, watching her breathe. Something in his chest tightened, not the sharp twist of old grief, but something different. Something like the fragile beginning of purpose. He stepped away quietly and let her sleep. Evening came with golden light spilling long across the floor. Gabrielle woke slowly, blinking at the warm hush of late-day glow. Andrew was in the kitchen when she came in, sleeves rolled, cooking something that filled the house with the smell of garlic and butter and something savory simmering low. She sat quietly at the table again, no fear this time. Just stillness. You like pasta? Andrew asked without looking up from the stove. She nodded. It'll be ready in a bit, he said, stirring the sauce. She watched him cook, steady movements, no rush. A man who didn't hurry life. A man who didn't speak to fill silence. A man who didn't expect gratitude. A man who simply did the thing his hands were in front of him to do. When the food was ready, he served her first again. Not out of pity. Not out of show. Just because. They ate together. Quiet. Warm. Soft. No one watching. No one waiting to take something away. After dinner, Andrew stood and looked at her carefully. Gabrielle, he said, would you like to see the backyard? There's a place there I think you'll like. She nodded. They walked outside through a sliding glass door, stepping into the cool evening air. The yard stretched wide under a sky beginning to fade into lavender and peach. The grass felt cool and soft under her bare feet. Fireflies flickered near the fence line like tiny floating sparks. Andrew led her toward the far corner of the yard where a large tree stood its strong trunk, branches spread wide like open arms. Beneath it sat a wooden bench, weathered but sturdy. Gabrielle approached it slowly. The wood was warm from the sun. She sat. And the world felt quiet in a way she had never known. Andrew sat beside her, but not too close. Giving her space. Letting the silence be a kind of language. The evening breeze moved through the leaves overhead, whispering something soft. Gabrielle's small voice came without force. Do you think she'll come for me? Andrew didn't ask who. He knew. He looked at the sky, soft colors fading into blue. If she comes, he said, she will have to look me in the eyes and explain why she left you alone in the woods. Gabrielle stared at him. And I don't think she will, he finished. Something in the air shifted. Not pain. Not relief. But truth. Gabrielle nodded once. Slowly. The fireflies blinked around them like tiny lanterns. She leaned her head against the tree trunk, her body small, but her presence beginning to return to itself. And Andrew sat beside her, watching the sky darken, the quiet settling deep and steady. No rush. No fear. No promises that could break. Just the beginning of something new. Gabrielle sat with the mug in both hands, holding it the way someone holds a thing they are afraid to drop, not because it is fragile, but because they need it too much. The cocoa smelled sweet, soft, warm. No bitterness. No sour aftertaste. No powdered milk that had gone stale in a damp cupboard. It tasted like safety. Even if she didn't fully believe in safety yet. Andrew sat back on the opposite couch. The room was quiet, except for the faint ticking of the wall clock and a bird outside tapping at the window for seeds only it knew were there. Gabrielle took a small sip. Then another. Her eyes relaxed just a little. Not fully. But enough. Andrew watched her without staring. He had the kind of presence that filled space without crowding it. He finally spoke, voice low. Tell me about your mother. Gabrielle's fingers tightened on the mug. Not to refuse. But because the memory was a living thing she had to hold carefully. She was beautiful, Gabrielle whispered. Everyone said so. Even the women who didn't like her said it. Her voice grew softer. She laughed in the mornings. Even when we didn't have much food. She'd laugh just to make the day feel lighter. Andrew nodded, letting silence guide her forward instead of questions. She used to braid my hair. Tight at first. Then loose when she realized I liked the soft kind. She said. Gabrielle swallowed, lips trembling. She said the world would be kinder to me if I walked into it neat. A tear rolled. Just one. Not sobbing. Just memory spilling. She tried. She really tried. But then she got sick. Andrew didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He didn't say I'm sorry. Because apologies don't patch holes that large. Gabrielle continued, words quiet as the dust floating in the sunlight. She didn't get medicine. Martha said medicine was for people who could pay for it. And we couldn't. A tiny pause. So she just got worse. And one morning, she didn't wake up. The room breathed around them. The clock ticked. The bird tapped again and flew away. Andrew's jaw tightened. Gabrielle set the mug down on the table. Her hands shook once. Then stilled. She told me, Gabrielle whispered, when she was still awake enough to speak, she said, one day, someone good would find me. Someone who actually saw me. Her eyes lifted slowly to his. I think, maybe, she meant you. Andrew didn't speak. But something changed in his eyes. A decision that rooted itself deep. He stood, not abruptly, but with purpose, and walked to the bookshelf. He slid open a drawer, reached inside, and took out a black leather wallet. From inside it, he removed a card, thin, metal, with a number engraved into it. He placed it gently on the table. What is that? Gabrielle asked. It's the number of someone who owes me a favor, Andrew said. And someone who can help me begin the paperwork to give you a life that won't be taken away. Not temporary. Not borrowed. Not until someone claims you. A life. Gabrielle stared at the metal card. Not fully understanding the world weight in it. but understanding enough to know it meant something real. Andrew looked at her again. In this house, he said quietly, your life is not a burden. You're not an extra mouth to feed. You're not a problem someone has to solve. You're a person. And you deserve to be safe. Gabrielle blinked. A soft, trembling inhale. Then. Knock, knock, knock. The sound shot through the house like a thread snapping. Gabrielle flinched hard, as if someone had shouted. Andrew's head turned sharply toward the door. His posture changed, not tense, but alert. Stay here, he said gently. Gabrielle froze in place, small hands gripping her dress. Andrew walked toward the front door, steps steady but quiet. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He opened the door. On the porch stood a woman in a dark gray coat, hair pinned back, a clipboard tucked under her arm. Her eyes were sharp. Pale. Assessing. Mr. Blackwood, she said, her voice clipped and professional. We received a report last night that you may be harboring an abandoned child. Andrew's expression didn't change. Inside the living room, Gabrielle's heart slammed so hard she thought her ribs might break. The woman continued. I'm with Child Protective Services. And I'll need to speak with the girl. The air in the house shifted. Heavy. Still. Dangerous. Andrew didn't step back. He didn't look away. And when he spoke, his voice was quiet. Which made it more powerful. She is not being harbored. She is being protected. And unless you have a warrant, no one in this house is going anywhere. The woman blinked. Just once. Gabrielle sat perfectly still. Not breathing. Not moving. Waiting to see if the world was about to break again. Andrew held the doorway like a wall made of steel. The woman drew in a thin breath. This will go smoother, she said, if you cooperate. Andrew's eyes chilled. It will go correctly, he answered, because I'm not letting a traumatized child be dragged into another bureaucratic maze. If you want to discuss her care, you'll do it through legal channels, with my attorney present. Silence. For the first time, the woman hesitated. Andrew didn't blink. Gabrielle watched him. And in that moment, she realized something. This man didn't just say he would protect her. He already was. The woman on the porch adjusted her glasses. Her expression didn't change, but her posture did, just a slight shift of weight onto her heels. A subtle retreat. A signal that she understood the line that had been drawn. Very well, she said coolly. I'll make note that you refused immediate access. Andrew didn't raise his voice. He didn't move from the doorway. I didn't refuse, he replied. I said we'll do it properly. The woman's jaw tightened. She gave a stiff nod and stepped back down onto the walkway. I'll return with the necessary documentation, she said. You do that, Andrew answered. She turned and began walking down the brick path. Her heels clicked sharply, like someone leaving a room after not getting their way. When she reached the end of the driveway, she paused and looked back at the house. At the windows. At the girl she had not yet seen. But knew was there. Then she walked away. Andrew waited until she was fully out of sight, past the hedge, past the street corner, before he closed the door. Not fast. Not loud. Just final. The lock slid into place with a soft, heavy click. Gabrielle still sat on the couch, small hands gripping her knees now, eyes wide and glassy, breathing shallow. Andrew turned to her. She expected him to say it's okay or she won't come back. But he didn't lie to her. He walked toward her slowly and sat down in the armchair across from her, elbows resting on his knees. That woman, he said calmly, is doing her job. But her job doesn't always understand what's best. So we are going to get ahead of this. Gabrielle nodded, even though her throat felt too tight to speak. Andrew leaned forward just a little. I need you to listen carefully, he said. No one is taking you away from here. But we have to be ready. That means telling the truth clearly and consistently. And I will be with you for every word. Understand? She tried to speak. Her voice cracked. Why yes, she whispered. Andrew's gaze was steady. Firm. Safe. You did nothing wrong, he said. Remember that. You did nothing wrong. Gabrielle looked at him, and something inside her began to break, not in the way things shatter, but in the way ice melts. Quietly. Slowly. Inevitably. Her eyes filled. Tears rose, but she did not sob. She just let them fall. Andrew said nothing. He didn't move to wipe her cheeks. He simply let her feel. Because no one had ever let her feel before. After a long quiet stretch, Andrew stood. But this time the movement was gentle, without weight. I'm going to make a call, he said, his tone returning to its steady, grounded cadence. My lawyer is someone I trust. He'll move fast. Faster than they will. Gabrielle nodded again, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. Andrew reached the hallway, then paused. Gabrielle? She looked up. His voice softened, not with pity, but with something far rarer. You are not alone anymore. The words landed. Solid. Real. Like a door opening inside her chest. The phone call was short. Andrew's voice stayed low, controlled. Yes. I need emergency counsel on a child custody matter. No, no one is in danger. Not anymore. Come now. He hung up and returned to the living room. Gabrielle had moved to the window. She wasn't peeking in fear. She was watching the street. Watching the woman walk farther and farther away. Andrew joined her, standing beside her but not crowding her. You were scared, he said, not asking, just acknowledging. Gabrielle nodded. She sounded like the kind of person who takes things away. Andrew sighed. A low, thoughtful sound. Yes, he said. Some people enforce rules without understanding the lives caught inside them. Gabrielle looked up at him. Are they going to try to take me? Andrew looked down at her. No, he said plainly. They are going to try to process you. There is a difference. One has no heart. The other does. And you have the heart, Gabrielle whispered. Andrew didn't answer. He didn't need to. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. But this time, the knock was different. Warm. Confident. Expected. Andrew opened the door. A tall man in a dark tailored suit stepped inside without waiting to be invited, because he was the kind of man who walked into problems to break them apart. Gabrielle watched him, cautious. The man smiled, soft, friendly, but respectful of distance. You must be Gabrielle, he said kindly. My name is Michael. I help families stay together. Family. The word was soft. But heavy. Gabrielle didn't speak. Michael didn't push. He turned to Andrew, tone professional. We need documentation, statements, any medical evidence of neglect or abandonment. And we file for immediate temporary guardianship. Once that's secured, she can't be removed without a court hearing. Andrew nodded. Do it. Gabrielle looked between them. Guardianship, she asked quietly. Michael crouched slightly so he could speak at her level without shrinking her. It means, he said, that the law will recognize what is already true. Gabrielle blinked up at him. What is true, she whispered. Michael's smile reached his eyes. That this is your home. Her breath trembled. Her shoulders shook. And for the first time since her mother died, she let herself cry. Not quietly. Not held back. Not in silence. But with sound. Real sound. The sound of a child who was finally allowed to break. Andrew crossed the space to her, not with hesitation, but with certainty, and this time, he did pull her into his arms. She clung to him like someone who had been drowning for years. And he held her like someone who had no intention of letting go. Not now. Not ever.